Hey guys, Rusola here. I'm a pretty short dude, and I'm pretty skinny. I'm only about 100 pounds. I've always been underweight. I've always been shorter than almost everybody else that I've known. Although something you probably wouldn't expect is, as a kid, compared to everybody else that I knew, I got into a lot more fights. Now, most of these aren't that serious. Most of them were before I was 14 even. I was just a kid. Most of the fights I got into were just like sparring. But I thought it'd be a fun video topic if I talk about every single fight that I got into in high school. I think it'll be a fun video. I think this is a good topic. I couldn't think of any others. So first off, in high school, I was the new kid. I had just moved from New York City up to Westchester. And my best friend in the city, before I moved, he gave me one piece of advice to make sure I never got bullied, to make sure that I made as many friends as possible, and to make sure that I was cool. He told me to find that one kid that wanted to be friends with everybody, that really nice kid that nobody actually likes, but they put up with him because he's so nice. He told me to find that kid and to punch him in the face the moment he talks to me. Well, I didn't do that, even though I actually moved in right next to that kid. And the first thing that happened when I got on the bus going to school, my first ever school bus trip, I immediately got bullied. I'm not saying my friend was right, but it sets up a lot of these other things. The first encounter I had was with this one kid in band class. For whatever reason, I don't remember the motivation behind it, but he thought it would be pretty funny to take my hat. I used to wear a beanie because I think I'd just gotten like a haircut or something, and I didn't like my hair, or just in general I didn't like my hair, but I almost never liked my hair. He was making fun of me for wearing the beanie, and then he went as far as to actually take the beanie off of my head and hold it. Well, once he did this, I told him, "You have 5 seconds to give me my beanie back." And he was like, "Yeah, or what? Are you gonna do what?" And I just started counting. I was like, 5, 4, 3, and he's just making fun of me with the people sitting around. I'm like, "Yeah, what's he gonna do? 2, 1, you gonna give it back?" He's like, "No." So I punched him in the face in the middle of class with 2 teachers like 10 feet away. They did not notice. The kid threw my hat across the room and called me crazy. He said, "Oh my god, this kid's crazy." And one of the, he was a sophomore, a tall football player, like 6 feet tall, super bulky. And at the time, I was like 5 feet tall only, if even. And I was about 80 to 90 pounds. I think I was like, yeah. One of his other sophomore friends actually picked up my hat and handed it back to me while he was going on a rant about how crazy I was. That's when I learned that people in Westchester were nothing like people in the city. People in the city, if you punch them, even if they're in the wrong, they're gonna fight you back. People in Westchester didn't seem that willing. That brings me to my second encounter, in the cafeteria in the first week of school. Which, funny enough, I think this happened before the one I just told, but the first one was more memorable. Basically, I was sitting at a table with these other couple freshmen that nobody really liked. I was being a class clown around them. I was always a class clown. One of them offered me his snack because he didn't want it. And I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll take it." And then a sophomore comes up and he's like, "Oh, you're not gonna have that snack? Oh, I want the snack. I'll take the snack." And he was being really just stereotypical bully, which is funny because he was just as tall as I was. He wasn't intimidating. Anyway, the kid buckles down and he says, "Yeah, you can have the snack." So the sophomore comes up to me trying to get the snack for me. Oh god, it's so difficult to tell these stories while not saying the names of the people and just saying the sophomore, the kid. The sophomore comes up to me to take the snack and I tell him no. He's like, "Oh, what? But why? The kid said I could have one." I was like, "Yeah, well, he said I could have it first." He's like, "Oh, but you just heard it. He said I could have it." I was like, "Well, he said I could have it first, so tough luck, buddy." So he goes to take it from me during a moment where I'm not paying too much attention. So I grab him by the wrist, I yank his arm closer to me, and I fucking bite right into his arm. And I just, as hard as I can, just bite, and I just hold it there for like a moment before I let go and I get my snack back. This kid also called me crazy, this sophomore, and he punches me in the back of the head as retribution. So I stand up, and because he's only my height and he's not like muscular or anything, I just shove him onto the ground, I kick him once, And then the monitors come over like, hey, what's going on here? The sophomore doesn't want to get in trouble, so he gets up. He's like, nothing. He walks away. I eat my snack. My head hurt a little bit, but I'd call that a victory. My third encounter was, I believe, halfway through the school year, so I had not made really a single friend in the entire school year. In fact, there was one girl that came up to me every day in science class, trying to talk to me, asking to be my friend, just what my name is, how I'm doing, and every day I'd respond the same way. I'd say, fuck off, go fuck yourself, get out of my face, you're a slut. I wasn't really that great of a person. I had depression. Anyway, in this class, there was this kid named Billy, and you may already recognize this name if you've been watching my videos for a while, because he has a good amount of videos on this channel, and he was sitting in my chair when I walked into class. So I walked up and I said, you're sitting in my chair. He was just talking to his friends, and he said, one moment, let me just finish this conversation. And I said, no, you're gonna get out of my chair right now. Billy was a little bit taller than me. He was more muscular than me. He wasn't like beefy, but he was more muscular than me. He was taller and just generally someone you would say I wouldn't want to mess with. And I told him, get out of my chair. It's my chair. You're getting out of it. I'm going to count down from 5 like I did with the other kid. I didn't say that part, but like I did with the other kid, I told him that I was going to count down from 5 and he had that long to get out of my chair. Now I've heard his side of the story from this, and he said he thought I was being way too cocky and he saw it as a challenge when I started counting. So he just kept talking to his friends. And I got to 0, he didn't get out of my chair, so I put my hands on his back, hoisted him up, and shoved him into a desk. I went to go towards my chair, but he turns around, puts his hand on me, and shoves me back into a desk. Yeah. I get up, we stare at each other for a moment with these pissed off faces, and then we both go to punch each other like right in the face, and getting like right here on each other, like we're just about to hit each other. We both stop and start dying of laughter. I don't know why. It's not like we knew each other. We never spoke. I hated this kid at the time, and he hated me. And we just both stopped just short of each other's faces and just started laughing. It was at this point that Mr. Billy... Fuck, here I am saying the names. Oh, I was trying not to say the names. Anyway, the science teacher, Mr. Billy, then turns to us and goes, what's going on? Sit down, you two. So we sit down, laughing our asses off, and that's how I made my best friend of all of high school. Encounter number 4. I've now made some friends and started hanging out at the town center in the area. It's like a big mall, basically, but outside. And I've been hanging out there for months at this point. I've made friends. I'm not like some recluse anymore. Recluse? Whatever one. And I was hanging out with this kid. His name was Matt. I'm just going to say the names. Fuck it. His name was Matt. And this other kid we were hanging out with, he decided... I had a $20 bill. Because I was gonna buy like food with it. Like we were going to Barnes and Nobles. They have these really large round cookies. They're amazing. I could eat like 2 of those and a bunch of other shit. I had a really fast metabolism and really large appetite as a teenager, but we'll talk about that another time. We were going to Barnes and Nobles to get some food. Weird choice, right? At this time, I was still a bit too trusting and just not, I don't know, cautious enough in front of people all the time. So the kid, he looks at me and he asks to see what I had in my hand. And I was like, yeah, look, it's just money. And then he takes the money out of my hand and I thought he was joking. So I went to get it back and he swats my hand away. I thought it was still a joke. I went to get my money and this time he punches me in the arm. It was in the arm and it wasn't the strongest punch, so still I thought he was joking. So I grabbed him by the wrist, or it was the shirt or something. I went to grab the money, he moved it away in time, and this time he just fucking shoves me full force backwards, and that's when I realized it's not a joke. And my friend Matt's just there like, what the hell is happening? Like he's never seen something like this in his entire life. I'm just standing here and I look at the kid and I'm like, really? A $20 bill? You want to do this over a $20 bill? I could buy you something with that $20 bill. I could buy you things for years. I buy things for people all the time. I was just about to buy you and him things. And you want to do this over one $20 bill? He just looked at me and said, yeah. And I was just like, okay, go ahead, have it. Surprisingly, I didn't punch him or anything. I just kind of said, all right, go ahead, take it. Take the $20 bill. That's my gift to you. Never spoke to the kid again. I think he actually ended up getting arrested like a few years later. But yeah, that's how that one went. No big epic fight. Technically, I lost that one. I didn't feel like fighting someone over a $20 bill. And it's not like this guy was bigger or more intimidating than anybody else that I'd gotten into any kind of scuffles with. The football players were way bigger than this kid. This kid was my height. It didn't seem worth getting into a fight in the middle of a parking lot over a $20 bill. Encounter number 5. Now, it's same setting, but in front of a McDonald's in the same like complex of buildings, the same outdoor mall area. There's this one kid that I didn't like. Nobody really liked him. People liked him on and off because he would apologize. He'd do something to piss you off. He'd apologize, repeat. Anyway, I was in a phase of not liking the kid, and he decided to see how far he could push me. He had always told me he was, now some people might find this funny if they know me today, but he always told me he was scared of me because I looked small, I looked skinny, I didn't look like I could hurt anybody, but I used to always tell him about all the stories of the fights I got into when I lived in the city. And that scared him somewhat because he wasn't bigger than me in size, he wasn't bigger than me in like bulk, beef, muscle. And today he decided to see how much I'd be willing to stop him from fucking with me. So I was sitting on the back end or the front end of a car with some of my friends. We were listening to music that was being blasted out of the car, and he comes up to us and he sits next to me with a big grin on his face, giggling and just like pushing up against me, trying to like push me towards the other side of the car, clearly just being obnoxious. Well, I gave him a warning and I told him to stop it. He didn't stop it. So I ended up grabbing him. I threw him off the car. He fell on his back on the ground, literally right outside the door of the McDonald's. I stood next to him and I was taunting him. I don't remember exactly what I said. It was something to the effect of, oh, what, you think you're so tough? Huh, you think you're tough shit? And I started kicking him while he was on the ground, and the entire time, all he was doing was giggling and telling me I was funny, while I was kicking him repeatedly. When I stopped and sat down, he got up and left, and I didn't see him for the rest of the day. Overall, a very weird encounter, but yeah, that's how that one went. The next one's not as happy. The next one, if that last one was happy. The next one's not as happy. The next one, I was hanging out with a group of people, same setting, again, and in the day, my friend comes up to me. He's kind of my friend. I talked to him, I was cool with him. He comes up to me as we're all going somewhere to hang out. Like, we were going behind a building because we were edgy teenagers. We hung out behind buildings instead of in front of them. And everyone goes on ahead, and this one kid stops in front of me, and he takes me by the shoulders, and he looks at me in the eyes with these big open eyes, and he says, listen, if I were you, I would be careful. And it's surreal to me. By the way, I had almost no sleep as a teenager in high school, so this is like a dream. Like, just a scene from a TV show. This kid grabbing me and saying, listen, if I were you, I'd be careful. It's like, why would I be careful? And he's like, because you look just like the kind of guy that someone would want to rob. It was a really surreal moment, and I didn't take it seriously. I just kind of ignored him. I said, okay. And I went back there. We were hanging out for a little bit, and there was this one guy, really tall guy, like, imagine your stereotype of a basketball player, but skinnier. That is what this guy looked like. He started asking me if he could borrow money for food and to buy something from, I forget the name of it, but they sold like iPads and iHomes. I think it started with an M or a W. I didn't really see anything wrong with this. I didn't dislike the kid. I was like, sure, here you go. Here's a $20 bill. Go get stuff. Conversation goes on. He starts asking for more money, and I was like, yeah, I don't have any more money. He thought I was lying, I think, and he kept pushing me for more money. He started getting a little more aggressive. And there was 5 other people here, by the way. Eventually, it started feeling kind of weird, the conversation. I started getting that surreal feeling again. So I went to go step away, and this other kid about my height, much bigger than me, but it was like all fat, comes up in front of me and pushes me back. And then the first guy, the basketball looking guy, puts his hand on my shoulder and holds me there, and they start getting a little more aggressive, asking for money. And I was like, I don't have any more money. So after a while, I start to leave again. The smaller kid gets in front of me, and I go ahead and I just punched him in the face for getting in front of me. He punches me back. We get into a little bit of a back and forth, punching each other. Most punches hitting around the chest rather than the face. My first one was to the face, but after that, everyone's face was guarded. After about 15-20 seconds of this, the basketball player looking kid comes up and he gets in the way. He's like, whoa, no, there's no need for that. There's no need for that. Just stop. It's okay. Pushes us apart. And then he starts holding me in place, like not letting me go anywhere. I had a book bag on. He ends up taking the book bag off and just looking through it. And that's when it really hit me what was happening here. And there was nobody around anywhere near us. He starts going through my book bag and taking shit out. And then when it hits me even further, just what's going on is when he takes something out. It was like a little bottle of cologne I like to carry around. He takes the little bottle of cologne and he chucks it. He chucks it so far, and I watch it like shatter. And then he goes back to asking for money. I'm like, I don't have money. What do you want me to do? And I'm looking at him, this tall basketball player looking kid. I'm looking at this other kid and the other 4 people. And I look at the situation. I'm like, I might tell some good stories. I may win fights a lot of the time when I start them, but this many people, what can I do about this? Eventually he comes up with the solution of having me call my mom and ask for her to bring me money. And so he ends up calling her and explaining that I purchased cigarettes from him and that I didn't have the money to pay him and that she needed to bring money. I was like, that's such a really stupid excuse. What ends up happening is my mom shows up with my stepdad. The moment my stepdad gets out of the car, so now by this point the other 4 people have left. I've actually skimmed over a lot of it. I got away from them once during the day, and I even had this whole big thing where I hid in a bush and they walked past me and didn't notice me, and they found me again, and that's how it got to the point we just got to. I can go over that story a lot more in depth if people want to hear about it. It's just too long for this video. And so eventually the only 2 remaining are the kid that I got in the little fight with and the tall basketball player looking kid. So it was like short, chubby white kid and tall, skinny black guy sees my stepdad, this above average height, medium like build black guy, get out of the car and look at them and start pointing at him, immediately starting to say something. They both booked it up a hill trying to run away from him. He runs up the hill. Basketball player looking dude gets away, but short chubby white kid gets grabbed. My stepdad throws him down a fucking hill and then ends up calling the cops. That's encounter number 6. I don't know what else to say about that one. It's a really long story. I only touched on about 30% of it there. Encounter number 7. Now this one is in school during my junior or senior year. I forget which one. Later on in my high school years, I always used to hang out in the morning in this back room in the music room because the music teacher just liked me for whatever reason. I would skip classes and go there. I would just hang out there for fun if I didn't want to deal with anyone. I would always arrive to school early because, why not, I guess. And there was a chair. There was only one good chair in the entire fucking room. And I loved that chair. And we always had a deal of whoever got there first got the chair. Usually this kid, Eddie... I'm saying names, goddammit. I'm not trying to say names. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say names, but oh well, they're coming out. Well, this kid, Eddie, usually beats me to the room and gets the chair, but days where I get to the chair first, I really appreciate. God, you have no idea how hot a room can get while you're constantly talking and there's a light shining on you. Oy. Anyway, this day I get to the room first before him and I'm sitting in the chair. He ends up showing up, putting all his shit down, and he comes up to me, puts his hand on my shoulder and says, "By the way, you know you're getting out of that chair, right?" Now this was after he already walked in, expressed surprise that I beat him there, etc., etc. I looked back at him and I said, "No, I'm not." And he looks at me, he says, "Yeah, you are." And I'm like, how about you go fuck yourself? And he backs up. There's a good minute or two where nothing happens because I'm doing stuff, he's doing stuff, and the moment I go to kind of like adjust myself in the chair, he pulls it out from under me. I catch myself, I turn around, and I go to push him away from the chair. He pushes me back, so I come in, and I punch him in the face. He comes back in, and he punches me right in the mouth. We go back and forth, another punch, another side of the face punch on basically each other, some punches in the chest and the arm going back and forth. There's another kid in the room watching this like, are you guys seriously fighting over a chair? Yes, we were fighting over a chair. This is the second chair I fought over in all of high school. I actually remember fighting over 3 chairs in high school, but I can't remember what the third chair was. By this point, both of us basically stopped for whatever reason. We were very adrenaline-fueled, glaring at each other kind of deal, and we just called it quits there for whatever reason. Got called in to see the vice principal later on in the day. The vice principal was so confused. She was like, you guys have had these perfect like records, never gotten in trouble, and then you know, you're like good friends, and I talked to him already, he didn't understand why it happened. I'm talking to you and you don't understand why it happened, and this is just so confusing to me. And it really was confusing. We ended up having to write like a apology to each other, and neither of us were allowed to use that room for like the rest of the year, but eventually the music teacher was just like, yeah, you could use it. Just don't fight each other over a chair. And finally, the 8th encounter I can remember getting into in high school. It wasn't really much of a fight, and there's a whole thing leading up to it, and I'm not going to be very specific about this one because this one I could talk about for an hour. And this one is a lot more sensitive than the rest of them. It would be one of those viewer discretion advised things. But basically, I was hanging out with this girl. She ended up trying to put her hands on me and do something that I wasn't really wanting to do. Me thinking it was just a matter of like, oh, just, you know, say no and stop it, you're good. I went to go move her hand away from me, her hands, I guess I should say, and she follows up by immediately like lunging towards me and starting to punch and just hit, just everywhere, basically. And while cutting out a lot of the details, it's worth mentioning there was a knife involved on her side as well. After a bit of a back and forth physical encounter where I didn't really do much except try to push her away from me, eventually, after a few minutes, this random hobo-looking guy walks past and catches our attention, which basically causes her to stop what she's doing. But yeah, that's pretty much all the physical altercations that I can remember getting into in high school, and this is a small amount of all the physical altercations I've been in my entire life. Looking at me, you wouldn't think I'd get into a lot of fights or anything like that. But there's a story of all the ones I got into during my high school years when I was between 14 and 17. There's more, and if you want to hear more, I could tell you more like that. If you want more information on one of the stories I told, or if you want to hear me talk about any topic in general, maybe react to some videos, could be gaming, could be related to the military. I love things about the military. I love things. I got a lot of family members that were in the military. A lot of my friends were in the military. A lot of people I played games with are or were in the military. Just let me know in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts are. And thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.